Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Kanak Kalita and I welcome all of you to this new session in the workshop of research paper writing. And this couple of sessions that I'll be handling over the next 4 to 5 hours is on research article writing. So initially we'll see some of the fine prints that are involved in the, research paper writing. I'll share some tips and tricks that I have acquired over the couple of the last 5 to 6 years in the publishing. And with these tips and tricks, I hope that you will be able to, next time when you are trying to write an article, you will be able to increase your efficiency. You will be able to uh, articulate the entire idea a little much better, and in the process, you will be able to also publish in better journals. That is what I hope. Okay, so in this regard, so what we'll do is that in the next two sessions, or for the next about 1 hour, what we'll do is that we'll see some of the uh, aspects in the theoretical sense, and then probably we'll spend around 2 hours on a live example that I will share with you. I will conceive a entire research paper based on secondary data. Of course, the same process is applicable also for the primary data, but in this case I will show a live article writing in about 2 hours sessions, and in that I will show how to construct an entire paper from a secondary data, and hopefully by the end of this workshop I will be able to complete the paper itself or the article itself, and I will in fact show you that I will submit it to a journal. So and I hope that taking inspiration from the process and learning from the process, you yourself will also be able to produce meaningful such secondary data-based meaningful research papers, which is perhaps also a necessity in the current times, because there is so much of data available. As I was telling about the data.gov.in, there are so much data available which have been collected primarily by the government, and there are so many other data that are available in different kinds of data journals. This data is out there, but maybe this data has been analyzed by the authors or the primary researchers only from one aspect, and there are a lot of other aspects that can be analyzed in this data, and this is something we will try to exploit in the upcoming sessions. Now, coming back to what basically a research article is. So, a research article is when we say research article, by definition, we mean that it should be an original research. Original in the sense that even if it is based on a secondary data, even if it is not based on a primary data, even then the research that is done on it, means the conclusions that we derive from it, the methods that we apply on it, and the conclusions that we derive from it are novel. Novel in the sense that they have not been done before, and they add to the knowledge base of that particular domain or that particular subject. In fact, they add something to the academic community or the scientific community. That is what we expect. That is what we expect from a research article. Again, when I was discussing about the different types of articles yesterday, we saw that there are so many different types of articles. For example, there are review articles, there are data articles, there are supplementary articles, there are technical articles, there are commentaries, there are uh, uh, other forms of papers like letter to the editor and so on. So the different types of academic articles that is out there, or the uh, different formats or the different modes of communication in terms of writing an article are varied. Okay, but specifically in this particular session, or in this couple of sessions, we will be talking only about research article. So by definition, as I said, in the research article, it is assumed that we are carrying out a particular work that no one else has done, and we are adding something new to the knowledge base of that particular domain or that particular subject. Also, I mentioned in one of the very first sessions that whenever we write a research article, it is our prime duty. It's not just a desire, but I think it's our duty to get the paper published in a peer-reviewed journal. Because if we peer review our article, or if our article is peer reviewed, then we can be sure, and then we can in fact, the academic community or the scientific community can also be sure that this particular paper has undergone some kind of quality check, and though the work that has been done in this paper may be different from, may not be exactly similar to that of the reviewer, but the reviewer also being from a similar kind of background must have been able to appreciate the work that has been done by the author, and he must have scrutinized it up to his, as per his level of expertise, which is again dependent on the fact that how well a editor chooses a reviewer. Now, in this sense, when we write a research article, it is not so different than a research proposal writing or a research grant writing. Okay, so in both the cases, it is kind of peer reviewed. Generally, in the case of research article writing, it is peer reviewed by contemporaries, means who have some equal standing in the field like you, or who have some equal or similar kind of interest in the academic field like you. But in case of proposal writing, generally these are uh, or the grant writing, these grants or the proposals are generally scrutinized by people who may not be your peers, but who are expert in some field of the academics, and that is why they make a mostly a kind of a objective as well as a subjective decision on whether this grant can be issued or not. Again, when a project research project grant is evaluated, a lot of other factors also come in, means for example the feasibility of the project, the feasibility of the finance department to issue the grant on that project, and so on. So other things also are also considered when we are when we review or when a particular research proposal grant is evaluated. But the same considerations may not be applicable when a research article is evaluated. Generally, the considerations when a research article is evaluated are that the particular paper that you have should be novel, it should have some scientific meaning, it should have some academic meaning, and it should build on the academic knowledge that is in which the particular paper is written on. Now, another important aspect in which a research article or a research paper differs from a research grant is that a research proposal is meant to be a persuasive or a kind of a document which convinces the readers to give him some money or give him some funds to carry out his research. On the other hand, a research article is meant to be very, very informative, where generally opinions are not published or opinions are not shared. Means, let's suppose say I am working in a particular field. Generally, my opinion should not find a place in that research article. Okay, my opinion in the sense means my opinion can find a place in that research article, provided that I give a sound logic to that particular opinion. Okay, only then it should find a place in the research article. Now, what is the importance of publication? So basically, we all know that publication is a means of self-satisfaction, because it helps you in multiple fronts. For example, it helps you in the career growth. At the same time, it helps the scientific community by addressing some problems or some research problems or some problems as a whole that the mankind or the scientific community is facing. And by producing some research and by publishing it, what you are doing is that you are stopping the reinvention of the wheel. Means, if suppose say if I have already invented the wheel, or if I have already invented something, and if I make this publicly available in terms of, if I make this knowledge publicly available in terms of writing a research paper, then anyone else who reads this research paper and who has a significant level of expertise can replicate my work, and he need not spend time as well as effort as well as money on inventing the same thing again and again, or carrying out the same thing again and again. And in fact, how this helps to progress the humankind as a whole is that once a particular research is done, then by reading that research or by understanding that research, someone else can build upon that and make an advanced version of that, or make some improvements to that theory or that model or that product. And this is why the publications are so important. Now, we'll strictly focus on, from now, we'll strictly focus on the process of writing an article. So I feel that the process of writing an article can be uh, divided into these 5 different steps that you see here. So the first step could be what I define as the pre-writing. Then you go for something called drafting. Then you go for revision, editing, and publication. So the process that we follow is that we pre-write something, then we do a draft of it, and then based on reading it again, we revise it, and then based on where you are going to send a particular journal, or what send to that what particular journal you are going to target, or what particular medium you are going to publish in. Based on that, you edit the paper depending on the requirements of the journal or the requirements of the medium by which you are uh, publishing your, or by disseminating your research, and then you go on for the actual publication, in which some of the facts that I mentioned yesterday, or some of the uh, information that I mentioned yesterday comes handy, because you need to choose a journal which is appropriate. You do not want to publish in a predatory journal. You do not want to publish in a journal that no one else reads. Okay, so that you want to publish in a journal that that has a good standing in the scientific community, so that the theory that you are going to publish, or the article or the research that you are going to publish in that journal, is carefully peer reviewed by a uh, expert, and at the same time it is available to other such peers, so that they can easily work on it and build on the research that you have done. Now, what is basically the pre-writing? So in the pre-writing, what basically we do is that we conceive an idea. Okay. What I mean by this is that even before we are going to the writing phase, probably you have already done the research, or probably you are doing the research of that particular topic, or in some cases, pre-writing can be, in fact, the first step of the research itself. Okay. In the pre-writing, or in that sense, you can say that it is pre-research, means uh, the pre-research work. Okay, so in that sense you can say that it's pre-research work. Basically, in this step, what we are trying to do is that if you have not already carried out the research, you try to find out a meaningful idea, or you try to find out a meaningful theory, or you try to find out a meaningful research problem that you want to tackle. That this happens in the pre-writing phase. And in case you have already done some of the research, in case you have already done some of the research in the pre-writing phase, what you basically do is that you do some kind of brainstorming regarding that, what do I want to present, what is my central theme going to be. Means whenever we are carrying out a research, we all know that generally there is a central theme to it, and there may be multiple branching themes out of it. Okay, there may be, you may have, for example, maybe you are from the materials background, maybe you have studied the mechanical properties, and maybe you have studied the uh, surface properties and so on. Now you have to decide that which is I am going to focus on. Means obviously you can report everything, but you have to focus on that which is going to be my main intention, in which particular area I am going to make the main contribution. Okay, so all these steps that you do, this you do in the brainstorming, because based on this target setting, or based on this goal setting, what you do is that you form your rest of the process. So in that sense, in the pre-writing phase, we do the brainstorming, we do the information gathering, we do making an idea web. Basically, an idea web is where you have an idea and you try to see the uh, options that you have in front of you, means how you can progress your research, in which direction you want to progress your research. Then you do something called the free writing. In free writing, what we do is that as you go on having some ideas, uh, we should write it down in a piece of paper, or maybe on your computer in the digital mode. You may save it. Means the ideas that you are having, you save them. They may not be in a very logical and sequential manner. They may be just random ideas that comes to your brain, and you just note them down, so that you can later you can read them, and later you can, you do not forget them, and based on that you can again think more about the research. Also, what we do in the pre-writing phase is that if we have already conducted and finished the research, then what we do is that we use some kind of a graphic organizer. So in the graphic organizer, basically what we try to do is that we try to see that how best the data or the information that we are going to present it. Are we going to present it in form of tables? Are we going to present it in form of graphs? If we are going to present it in form of graphs, which kind of graphs would be the most appropriate? Who is going to be the target audience? And based on that, how I'm going to represent the data that I have. And then in the pre-writing phase itself, you create an outline. When what I mean by creating an outline is that you find uh, a skeleton to the paper that you are going to write, in the sense that we all know that uh, our body or any animal body is made of the skeleton, and on that we have the muscles and the flesh and all these things. So basically in the same way, you make the core architecture of the paper. Okay, you write it down that I am going to have an abstract, and then I am going to have an introduction, then I am going to have a methodology section. In the methodology section, I'm going to describe this particular method, I'm going to describe this particular method, and so on. So like this you form an entire skeleton, and that is the uh, that this process is creating the outline. Okay, next you have two steps that go on hand in hand. Okay, the drafting and the revision. So again, this process, drafting and the revision process, generally uh, are very close knit, and in many cases this can be considered as one, in many cases it can be considered as two separate process, in many cases it can be considered as a loop process where you iterate between the two of them. Okay, you write a draft, then you do a revision, then you write a second draft, then you do another revision, and so on. Okay, so what basically happens in this particular step is that you clarify the main ideas that you have. Okay, okay, this is going to be the central idea that I'm going to present in this paper. You note it down, or uh, you stress on that, and then based on that you write down, on basis of that particular idea, you write down the theory behind it, you write down the you describe the proper information that is needed behind it, and so on. Okay, once you have this particular drafting or this particular draft ready, initially in the draft what we do is that, what I suggest that you should do is that, and what I do is that, uh, we write down the entire paper, or we try to write down most of the paper, at least like 80 to 90% of the paper we try to write down during the drafting phase. In this particular, in this phase of the article writing, don't be bothered about whether I am writing the sentences in a very coherent manner. What I mean by this is that, whether I am writing them in a very sequential manner, is the reader going to understand this and all that. Don't be bothered about that. If some information comes to your head, and you think that this is necessary, just write it down. Okay, so I will show you how I tackle this kind of problem when we do the live sessions tomorrow. How I go about in the drafting phase, I'll show that process also to you. And I have found this process very very effective, and that is why you can see that I produce almost at uh, my current speed is about 1 SCI every month. So I've been very successful in that way, by thinking on the idea that I have, and then I break down the work that I have into small goals, and I am able to achieve these goals at a very rapid pace because I have made a very streamlined kind of process, and this streamlined kind of process is what I'm trying to share with you. Okay, so once you are going into the drafting phase, don't be bothered about what kind of sentences that you are using. Don't be bothered about am I writing the information in very logical form. For example, if suppose say in the previous step you have already created an outline, right? You have already created an outline. Okay, and in fact you have also created you have also used a graphic organizer to make all the graphs. I'm assuming that you have made all the graphs or all the data that you have already analyzed them, and you have decided on how you want to represent them. Of course some changes to this is possible as you go on in the drafting and the revision phase, but in a overall sense, or in a broader sense, you have already decided that how you are going to present and what you are going to present. So that information is already there uh, in this paper that you are trying to write. And when suppose say you see a particular figure, okay, suppose say you see figure number 1 or the first figure. Again, these figures also need not be in a very sequential manner. Suppose say you see a particular figure, just below the figure try to write down any sentences that comes to your mind, or any explanation that you find for what is there in the particular figure. You try to explain the figure to a layman. Okay, don't be bothered about uh, uh, the number of the words and so on in the first step. Okay, just try to explain everything that is there in the figure, or try to explain everything that is there in the table. Okay, once you do that, like this, you can have in the drafting phase, you can have individual paragraphs for each of the tables and each of the graphs that you have done. Next comes the revision phase. In this revision phase, start to think of the entire paper as one unit. Okay, until now you have been trying to write the paper as a discrete unit, where you have been trying to write the paper in a very piecemeal kind of attitude. Okay, you have seen one particular graph and you are going to write about that particular graph. You have seen the second graph, you are not bothered about what I have written in the first graph. Is it making any connection with the first graph? You just write down what you see in the second graph and you just try to write down your entire thing. Okay, when I mean you write down the first graph or the second graph, suppose say in some cases you have three graphs that are describing one central idea or one common idea, then you write about all these three graphs together in one paragraph. Okay, then maybe you have another 2 to 3 graphs on one idea, you write down everything on this idea together. Okay, based on these 2 3 graphs. So once you have like this kind of small units that are or these small paragraphs or these small subgroups, okay, which are basically in at times it may be 1 or 2 lines, at times it may be a large paragraph. This describe a particular event in the paper, or it describes a particular component of the paper, or it describes a particular graph or data in the paper. So once you have that, then go on to the next step of what now you try to do is that you try to arrange like a piece of puzzle. You try to arrange all these words or all these paragraphs that you have, you try to arrange them in a very sequential manner. Now once you think that you have a rough kind of sequence, okay, you have a, it need not be an exact kind of sequence. Once you think that you have now a fairly understandable sequence that anyone who reads this particular paper is going to get the gist out of this paper, once you feel that, now you start revising the paper. Okay, now comes the revision of the paper. Now you try to read the paper from top to bottom, so excluding the abstract and the excluding the conclusion. Okay, you start with the introduction and you try to read the entire paper. So as you go on reading the particular paper, you will find that these individual paragraphs are there, and at times this paragraph number 1 has no link to paragraph number 2. Now go on and add some filler statements in between. What I mean by filler statements is that try to put in statements either in paragraph number 1 or paragraph number 2, at the beginning of the paragraph number 1, or at the end of the paragraph number at the end of the paragraph number 1, or at the beginning of the paragraph number 2, that connects the two paragraphs. Okay, try to draw some kind of a line between them, means try to connect these dots that you have. So once you go on and do this activity with the entire paper, again read it, and you will find that now the paper makes a lot more sense than the first time that what you have done. Now the work is also arranged in a very sequential manner. At the same time, the work is also meaning some kind of sense, because now the paper appears to be more coherent. Then you go on with the revision phase. Again, there are so many different kinds of recommendations that people give for revision phase. Okay, you read the entire paper from top to bottom, and then based on wherever you need that, here this particular place is not so clear, you go on and add some sentences, or you add some data, or whatever you need to do, you do that. Okay, again, there are different kinds of suggestions that people give in on revision. For example, I was working with during my PhD, I was working with my co-guide, and he used to tell me that uh, what he does is that whenever I send him a paper, once I asked him that whenever I send him a research paper, what he would do is that he would take a lot of time. I would write the entire paper from top to bottom. I will finish the entire paper, and before submitting, I will just send to my co-guide, in fact to both my guides, and I will send to them and ask them to review the paper and give some comments on that paper and gives any necessary changes that is needed in the paper. As I went on publishing papers in my PhD, I found that my main guide, he would used to return the research paper to me in about 5 to 6 days, whereas my co-guide would take a lot of time. He would take around 20 to almost 1 month, 20 days to almost 1 month at times. Once being the kind of we all during our PhDs are very eager to finish our PhD as soon as possible, and in fact we are also very eager to publish our first paper. We always want to publish more and more papers in the PhD. So in that sense, I was very eager, and I always used to think that I have already completed the work, and why is it taking so much time? Once I could not resist myself, and I asked him at this, and he told me that though you have completed the paper from your side, what I follow a process is that I read the paper. Once you send me the paper, I immediately read it, and I make any necessary changes that I feel, or I make any necessary comments that I feel in the paper. Once I have these comments, I close that particular paper, and I don't look at this paper for another maybe another 10 days or 15 days, and then I again look at this paper. After 10 or 15 days, I look at this paper, and surprisingly, every time when I read this paper after 10 days or 15 days, I always find that there is so many more changes that I need. These changes or these suggestions didn't came to me during the first time. Okay, that is what he said me, and then he would add some more points to it, and he would repeat this process one more time, and that is why probably he needed around 20 to 30 days every time when I send him a paper. So he would go on add comment, he would go on making revisions to the paper in a very step by step manner. He would do some revisions to that particular paper, and uh, he made significant changes to that paper, and he would just keep it like that for uh, 20 days or 15 days, and after that he would read the paper, and he says that he would always find even more changes that he wanted to make in the second try. So this is basically a process that works for him. It may not work for many of you because you may have more stricter deadlines. It may work for you, it may not work for you. Though I have been trying to adapt that, I have not adapted completely, but nevertheless, there are different kinds of suggestions that people give for the revision. The only suggestion that is consistent among all the suggestions is that you read the paper multiple times. Okay. Some people comment on that there should be, whenever you are reading the paper for multiple times, there should be some gap between them in terms of the example that I told you. Gap in the sense means there should be a couple of days gap, or there should be 2 days gap. In some cases, they suggest that it should be a 1 week gap, and so on. But one thing is consistent among all the suggestions is that to revise a paper, you need to read it multiple times. You need to read your own work multiple times. You read it today, you read it tomorrow, you read it 5 times, you read it 10 times, and at least when you read it again and again, you will every time you will find that you have some small revisions. The more and more you read about it, you'll find that there are many small things that probably you have overlooked, that you have taken for granted. You have probably thought that this should be known to the reviewer, or this should be known to the readers, but it may not be so. Okay. So again, if you are doing a very collaborative work, it is much easier to revise, because then suppose say if one of you is the primary author and he has already read the paper, then you can, suppose say in my case, in my PhD, since I was the primary author, I would use to write the paper, and I would use to send to both my guides. And you know how the human mind works. Each of us have some unique ideas. So every time a different person reads that paper, he finds some more modifications, or he finds some minor flaws, or he finds some minor revisions that can improve the overall quality of the paper. Similarly, the more number of people that will read your paper, the more number of revisions, or the more number of refinement that you are going to get. So that is why in a typical uh, multi-person collaborative project, try that the draft that you're writing, or the final draft from the final draft in the sense means the draft that you think is the most appropriate and that has all the information, that should be read and reviewed by every one of the authors, and then only, and the ideas of all the authors should be again incorporated and revised, and then only it should be submitted to a journal. That is why you always find that whenever we send a particular paper to review, it is rare that a paper is accepted without any comments, or without any changes, without means in as it is known. Most of the times we find that we always get some comments from the reviewers, because that is how the human mind works. You may have overlooked something, you may have thought that something is trivial, and uh, something is that everyone knows, but the reviewer may not feel it, and the reviewer may feel that this is something that would improve the uh, appeal of your paper, or improve the impact of your paper. Again, in that sense, revision is subjective. Okay, so that is why since it is going through a subjective evaluation, it should be evaluated multiple times. In cases if it is possible by you, in cases if it is not possible, in cases by everyone, a lot of other people, and if it is not possible, then by you or multiple times. Okay, this is basically the process of revision and drafting and revision. Then you go on with the editing phase. In the editing phase, primarily what you try to do is that you spell check the entire thing, you grammar check the entire thing, you see for punctuation mistakes and all that. Most of us being we are not native English speakers, right? Most of us learn English as a language in our school. Okay, we are not native English speakers, so we are bound to make some spelling mistakes, we are bound to make some grammatical mistakes and some punctuation mistakes here and there. So you can eliminate this only by reading it multiple times, only by revising the paper again and again, by going through the paper again and again. And in this sense, you have a lot of tools that are available which can help you in this aid. For example, you have tools like Grammarly, which are generally, you can get a free version of the Grammarly. For example, I have a Grammarly installed. I have a free version of the Grammarly installed in my computer. And if you have the funds for it, or if you have access to it, the full subscription mode is even better. But if you do not have subscription for it, even the free version works fine on in terms of detecting all the spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, and punctuation mistakes. So the grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes you can easily find out even with the free version of the Grammarly. There may be other such editing, means English checking softwares. I may not be aware about them. I specifically know about Grammarly, and my feedback about Grammarly is very, very good. I have been very happy with Grammarly. In fact, in past I had subscription versions to Grammarly, but I didn't find much difference between the subscription version uh, and the non-subscription version. Okay, so then you go on with the publication. So when you go on with the publication, you try to find out a suitable journal. Okay, again, finding a suitable journal can be a very tiring job. Okay, because many of the times we face rejection uh, only on the reason that the editor, or perhaps from the journal side, it is communicated to us that the paper that you have submitted to the journal is not within the scope of that particular journal. And many times we may face rejection, or we may face serious hurdles in publishing, because we have not formatted, or we have not uh, modeled our paper as per the policies laid down by the journal. Okay, for example, uh, in fact, just day before yesterday, I sent a paper to a SEO journal called the Industrial Lubrication Journal, and it was returned to me because apparently, though I read it in their policy statement, I thought that this is something that they are not going to strictly follow. In the policy statement, it was written that the research article should not be more than 3,000 words, whereas my article was somewhere around 5,200 words. So it was returned back to me, and I was told to revise the paper so that it should be within 3,000 words. So this kind of additional policies may be instituted by the journal, and this you have to take care of before submitting the particular paper. In many a times, what happens is that the word limit that is given in the journals are relaxed. For example, I have seen a lot of journals which say that you have to submit a paper which is within 4,000 words. But once they see a particular study and they feel that this study is good, but it cannot be, the entire study cannot be meaningfully covered in 4,000 words, they give relaxation for another 5,000, another 1,000 words, or maybe another 500 words, and so on. So this may happen. Okay. So, but it is always best to adhere to the policies of the journal. Now, on the question of how to find a suitable journal, I am going to show you a couple of tricks that you can use to find out a suitable journal. But this process that I am going to show you will work best if you have already written the paper. It will work only when, in fact, it will work only when you have written the entire paper, you have revised it multiple times, uh, you have, you are sure that the entire paper that you have written is now free from errors, and it has all the information that is there in this particular paper. And in fact, the this method will only work uh, if and only if the abstract that you have written for that particular paper is a meaningful summary of the entire work that you have done. If suppose say in your work you have done, suppose say you have attempted 5 different objectives and you have worked on 5 different objectives, but if suppose say in the abstract you have covered only about the information of only 2 objectives or 3 objectives, then it may not work best for you. This method may show you papers which may not be may show you journals which may not be appropriate for you. So for this method that I'm going to show, the best is that you have a title that clearly captures the entire gist of the paper. At the same time, you have an abstract that is a meaningful summary of the entire paper that you have written. So let me go and show you what basically we can do to find out a particular paper, okay, particular journal for this for publication. So let me go to the online mode. Let me go to the online mode, and let me, and for this I need a paper which probably is written and is ready to be submitted. Okay, for example, in this case, let me take this particular example. So this is a particular paper that is written and we are about to submit it. In fact, this is the paper that we have submitted to lubrication. So suppose say this paper is there with you. You have already written the entire paper, and this entire paper has now a abstract. Okay, it has an abstract and uh, it has a heading. It has a heading that meaningfully takes it meaningfully concludes the entire study that I have. It is a meaningful representation of the entire study that I have. Similarly, the abstract that I have is a meaningful representation of the entire study. Now, what you can do is that to find out an appropriate journal, you can go on to Clarivate. Okay, in fact, I can share the I have the exact. Um, Let me go, and I have in fact bookmarked this. For my convenience, I have all the important websites listed here. So let me go and see this one. I'll show you a couple of options that you can have, and you can go to, for example, you can go to this one, and you can go to, just a minute, yeah, and probably you can also go to this one. So this method will work best if you are trying to find an appropriate SCI journal, but the same method can also be applied for Scopus journal. But again, when you are applying this for Scopus journal, the applications or the amount of journals that are available to you may be limited. But when you are using this method on for selecting appropriate SCI journals, this will work the best. Okay, this is generally the method that I use most of the times to find an appropriate SCI journals. So for this, you need to go on to this particular website, which is the website of the Clarivate Analytics. Okay, we knew about this from yesterday. I'll just log into this website, uh, showing the credentials that I showed you yesterday. I'll just log in here. Let me just log in here, and then what you do here is that you do some kind of a mapping of the abstract. Okay, so you do some kind of mapping of the abstract uh, in the paper, okay, or the abstract of the paper and the title of the paper. So now here you go to these particular options. Once you have logged in, you go to this particular options called the match manuscript option. Okay, once you switch on to this match manuscript option, this uh, should come before you. So you write down the title of the paper here. You write down the abstract of the paper here. Then this is why what we are trying to do here basically is that based on the paper that we have, we are trying to uh, compare the paper the uh, with the SCI database, and we are trying to see that how best it will work. So you can see that the first uh, uh, match that I have is this particular journal in which I had already submitted it. And again, they have asked me for revisions in terms of reducing the words. So this is the best match for the particular paper that I've sent, industrial lubrication and tribology. So this is how basically you find an appropriate journal. So here, what you see here is that you get an idea of the match score. So depending on the keywords that are there, you find that how well this particular paper is matching with the journal where you have targeted. Then you have other suggestions here lined up, and all of them are uh, Web of Science suggestions. Okay, so based on these suggestions, now in fact in this case you can see that I have total 45 options. Okay, so again by default what this tool does is that it arranges all the suggestions that are given to you based on the uh, correlation. Okay, correlation of this particular paper with that particular journal. For example, you see that this is a particular journal where they have found a match of around 0.15 means it's a poor correlation, but nevertheless it's still a correlation. And if you go on towards the top, you will find that this kind of journals has a very high correlation to the topic that I have submitted. So basically how this tool works is that it uh, as you know that Web of Science is basically an abstracting site, so or a abstracting database. So what it does is that it compares your title and your abstract with all the papers that are published in the that are available in the SCI or the Web of Science database. So by doing it, what it is trying to do is that it is trying to match the keywords that are there in your paper with already published paper. And by doing that, what it does is that it is able to find out a good correlation between the already published papers and your particular paper. And that is why you find that, for example, the top keywords in my article were on thin film coatings, which you see that it has a very high correlation of 0.9 with this particular journal. I am using a particular method called atmospheric pressure CVD process to design to carry out my experiments. So you see that these papers from this particular process have already been published in this journal. That is why I have a very good correlation here. And I have done a lot of surface imaging by using surface morphology imaging by using field emission SEM microscopy or scanning electron microscopy. Again, this is something that is constantly reported in this particular journal. So like this, you get an idea of which journals you have to submit, okay, which journals you can submit. So let me just close this. Again, you have some other options here. For example, this is the famous publisher Elsevier. It's a very large publisher. So here also you can do the same thing. You can report your data here. Okay, you can do this. For example, this is for Elsevier. This is similarly, this is for another large publisher called Wiley. You can go and use the same method for Wiley. This is for Springer. Okay, but the problem with this particular method is that no such manuscript matching tool is still now it is not available in the Scopus. So directly with the Scopus database you cannot compare, but in the SCI that advantage is there that within the SCI database you can compare your paper with already published papers. That is the advantage while selecting an SCI journal. And in this case, these are all very large journals or very large publishers like Springer, Elsevier, and Wiley. These are very large publishers, specifically in the area of engineering and basic sciences. So here you get a lot of options, so that here also you can go on and find out the journals. For example, I'll just go on and place. I will just go on and search in all these cases. I'll just go on and type my okay. So let me analyze the results one by one. For example, let me start with Elsevier. So you can see that in the Elsevier website, I have around 50 recommendations. Okay, I have around 50 recommendations, and here the recommendations are based on again the text match score. So here you see that the text match score is excellent for this particular journal. And now here the advantage in finding the journals from, suppose say from Springer or for Elsevier and Wiley, is that you get additional information like what is the impact factor of this journal, what is the acceptance rate of the journal, what is the first decision time, and all this kind of information you also get from analyzing your paper with respect to the journal finder in this particular websites. So now you are able to make a meaningful decision regarding that when can I expect a decision for my paper, because here the average time is given to you. In fact, this is the median time that is given to you. So this is about 3 weeks. So it shows that the decision making process of this particular journal is very fast. It also tells you that what is the appropriate matching acceptance rate of this particular journal and so on. And if suppose say you want to concentrate only on, suppose say, the Scopus, okay, you are not bothered about the SCI, then also you can go and refine your search from here. You can go on and you can refine your search from here. Okay. Similarly, you can do the same thing for Wiley. In fact, based on my topic, Wiley shows that it doesn't have any particular journal which is directly relevant to the work that I'm trying to publish. Okay. Again, in case of Springer also, you find a similar kind of list that has been created where you get the average number of time taken for acceptance of a particular, for first decision of a particular paper, and you get the acceptance rate. And here also you see all the information regarding the particular journals based on the matching percentage. Okay, so you find that some of the journals have very high acceptance rate. uh, Again, 43 is a very high number when we talk of, in fact, this is a very, very high number, but you can see that this is not an SCI journal, since now it doesn't show any impact factor. And all these things also you can refine your recommendations here. For example, if you want a minimum impact factor of 0.01, or if you want a particular indexing to exist, for example, if you want your particular journal to be of Scopus, you need to remove this, and then you can go on and suggest. So all the journal suggestions that will be shown here are now at least in Scopus. Most of them are also in SCI or the Web of Science database, but all of them are in the uh, Scopus database. Okay, so like this you can make some uh, recommendations on which particular journals you want to publish. Additionally, another recommendation or another important aspect from where you will find out that which particular journal is most relevant to you is from this section, and this section is your reference section. So obviously, when you have written your paper, you have referred to a lot of journals, a lot of articles. For example, in my case, I referred to some 35 to 40 articles. So once you go through all the articles that you have referred, that you have found directly helpful to your particular research, you will come to know that which particular journals are there which are publishing similar kind of research. So from here also you will get a primary idea of which particular journal would be most suitable for the work that you are going to publish. Okay? So this is how you select an appropriate journal, and by selecting a journal like this, you will be able to minimize the rejection rate that is generally there from the editor itself of that particular paper is not within the scope, or this particular paper, the theme of this particular paper is not relevant to our publication. So you can avoid this kind of uh, statements or this kind of rejections upright by the editor or the editor-in-chief by investing in this kind of a methodology while selecting a particular journal. Again, I hope that in the coming years, probably Scopus will also develop such a tool where we can match our particular paper with the Scopus database, and then we'll be able to find out similar papers or similar journals in the Scopus database also. But nevertheless, you have to do some hard work by yourself in identifying the most appropriate journal and going through the uh, rules and regulations that are laid down in the particular paper or in the particular journal, so that your paper or your particular article is directly matching to the uh, journal that you are submitting. So we'll continue on this, and we'll see most of the other aspects of the article writing. We'll look at all the other aspects of article writing, like how do we select a particular title, that how to select a particular title, what are the tips and tricks are there to write down the article, how we should write an abstract, and all this we'll discuss in much more detail tomorrow. In fact, I have already said that we are going to do a live example. So we'll also be doing one live example where I will try to write a paper from a secondary data source, maybe from the data.gov.in, or maybe some of the data papers that have been already published. And then we'll see how we use the principles that we describe in this particular sessions to write down a particular paper. So I hope that this session was helpful. Thank you.